The Tidebound Oath. Moonfire drifted across the waves like scattered silver petals, and far beneath that shimmering skin of water, Seraya hovered in her silent vigil. She reclined against a cradle of coral that had grown around her over decades, sculpted by the slow pulse of her presence. Fan-shaped fronds stirred in the soft current, brushing her arms like lovers begging attention, but her eyes were fixed upward, ever upward, on the dark silhouette of Blackthorn Lighthouse perched atop its jagged promontory. She knew every inch of that crumbling tower. She knew the broken corner window where gulls nested in spring, the rusted bell that had not tolled since the keeper's father died, and the warm golden square of lamplight that spilled from the study each night no matter the hour. That light belonged to Aiden Blackthorn, and Seraya, sworn protector, watched him as faithfully as the tides met the shore. Long ago she had dared drift close enough to hear his voice when he read aloud to the empty room, a habit he kept to stave off loneliness. The cadence of his words had wrapped around her like tide-warm silk, low, rough, but carrying hidden gentleness. He read tales of distant seas and mythic creatures, and sometimes, rarely, he closed the book mid-sentence and spoke of his brother, Finn, whom the sea had stolen. Those nights his grief trembled through the window glass, and Seraya's heart answered with ache. It should have been enough to watch. To intervene was forbidden. She knew the law as deeply as she knew the water in her lungs. But duty, like a current, can wear smooth even the sharpest resolve, and tonight the wind tasted of upheaval. Seraya flicked her tail, pale fins glimmering as she rose through the turquoise gloom. Up close, the underside of the surf roared like 1,000 distant drums. Rain pelted the sea skin above, each drop a silver needle stitching sky to water. Black clouds churned. A storm, but not ordinary. Something brutish stirred within it, driven by malice older than lighthouses, older than human memory. Her gills fluttered in warning. Far below, a tremor rolled through the ocean bed. She felt it inside her bones, a pulse echoing from a prisoned heart. The drowned queen was turning in her abyss. Seraya broke the surface behind the mask of night and rain, gaze darting to the lighthouse. Lightning strobed, revealing Aiden at the rail of the lantern room. Coat whipped by wind, he wrestled with a section of the brass housing securing the lamp in place. Foolish to remain outside. She sensed rather than saw the slick stones beneath his boots. A whaler out past the reef sounded its forlorn horn. Another life depending on that beacon's glow. Typical, she thought ruefully. The man would sooner risk his own neck than dim that light. A surge of pride rose in her chest, quickly chased by fear. Even with her speed, she might not reach him in time if... The wind screamed as a wall of water reared against the headland. It struck the cliff face, shattering on the rocks and sending a surge that rattled the lighthouse foundations. Aiden lost his grip. His body pitched sideways, arms pinwheeling. Seraya felt her own breath seize. He slammed the railing hard, clung a moment, then another gust tore him free. He was airborne only a heartbeat before gravity caught him. Thunder swallowed his startled cry as he plunged. Seraya's pulse exploded. She shot forward, cutting through the water like an arrow. The cliff loomed, rough black stone slick with algae, pounded by breakers big as city walls. She calculated angles by instinct. His body's arc, the incoming swell, the jagged teeth of rock below. She reached him mid-fall, coiling an arm around his chest just as they crashed into the sea. Impact stung her spine. The wave drove them deep into strobing darkness. Aiden struggled, lungs convulsing. Seraya folded her tail, propelling them out of the downdraft, fingers pressed against his sternum. She willed her magic outward. Bubbles like molten pearl spiraled from her palm into his parted lips. His frantic thrashing slowed, eyes fluttering as oxygen threaded through blood. He stared at her. Through the shimmer of torn moonlight, he must have seen the silver of her hair swirling like comet trails, the faint glow of sigils flickering across her skin. His mouth formed a question, but water muffled the sound. She shook her head gently, a silent plea for trust. then angled them toward a sheltered grotto at the cliff's base. Within the cavern, the sea was calmer, lapping against smooth rock. She laid him on a slanted shelf just above the waterline. He coughed violently, spewing seawater, and rolled to his side. She watched his chest rise and fall. Relief loosened her ribs. His eyes opened. Even in gloom they were striking. Storm gray, ringed with darker flecks. They darted across her face, down to the gleam of scales where water still kissed her hips. Rain hissed at the cave mouth, scattering sheets of silver. "I'm alive?" he rasped. "For the moment," she answered, voice quiet as tide between rocks. His gaze sharpened. "You pulled me from the storm?" "Yes." "Who? What?" His hand reached toward her hair, stopped midair. "I saw a tail." Seraya swallowed. Longing warred with caution. She should vanish, return to the deep, trust that memory would blur into nightmare. But seeing him so near, feeling the echo of his heartbeat still pounding against her arm, she could not move. "A guardian," she whispered, "nothing more." He tried to sit. Pain swept across his features, but he steadied himself. "I owe you my life." "Keep it then, guard it well." She rose, water cascading off her skin. The cave pool beckoned, a portal back to safety. She turned, but his hand caught hers. "Wait." Desperation cracked in that single word. "Please don't leave me wondering." "You would not believe," she said, throat tightening. Lightning flared outside, outlining the cave mouth like a doorway to another world. "Better for you to forget." "I don't want to forget," he said fiercely. "I already lost too much to the sea." Her resolve faltered. Memories surfaced unbidden. A small boy crying on the sand beside a broken boat, clutching his dead brother's coat. She had watched Aiden mourn, powerless to comfort. Now he sat before her, gaze pleading. Outside thunder rumbled, deeper, older. The cave water vibrated with distant resonance. She felt the watchers shift in their coral thrones, felt their eyes flick open across shadowed trenches. They had sensed her betrayal. "Aiden, the storm is not done." She withdrew her hand. "Stay inside until dawn. Then go. Live." She stepped backward into the pool. Water climbed to her waist, chilling human skin that shimmered and slipped away, replaced by the familiar glitter of scales. His breath caught. "You're real," he whispered. "What are you called?" She hesitated, name poised on her tongue like forbidden fruit. Gulls cried somewhere above the storm, sounding lost. At last she said, "Seraya." She dove, tail sweeping. The water closed over her head, and darkness swallowed his wide-eyed wonder. Below, the sea storm was worse. Waves roiled like overturned mountains, and streaks of violet lightning writhed within them. Unnatural, tainted magic. Seraya cut through swirling silt, propelled by adrenaline. In the distance, toward the continental shelf, a green glow pulsed steady as a drumbeat, the beacon of the deep watchers. They were calling her. She reached the trench rim where water plunged into endless night. There, among forested pillars of black coral, the watchers rose. 7 towering figures woven of tide and memory, faces blank as polished obsidian. Their voices resonated in her skull rather than her ears. Guardian Seraya, Oathbreaker. She bowed her head, though fear trembled her spine. "I saved my charge. You intervened. The human's life is his trial, not your gift. One life for one law. The balance must be paid. Balance can weigh in mercy," she argued. The tallest watcher leaned forward. "Mercy to one is chaos to many. We sense the Queen's chains faltering. Your defiance hastens her return." Seraya's pulse skipped. She stirs because of older evils, not one rescue. Silence thrummed, then a voice like cracking ice. "Then choose. Restore the oath by sunrise. Cut the bond. erase his memory, or we claim his soul at the next full tide. Obey, and your station remains. Rebel, and you are cast out. Hunted beside him. Cast out. The words chilled her more than trench water. Cast out meant no sanctuary, no welcome, nowhere to hide from currents turned cruel. Yet the image of Aiden gasping beneath storm waves seared her conscience. She met the watcher's blank gaze. I need time. They receded into darkness. Sunrise, their thoughts echoed. Seraya fled, heart hammering. The ocean felt suddenly smaller, every shadow a spy. She breached far from land beneath a sliver of moon. Wind had eased, rain softened. She drifted until water smoothed the edges of panic. Only then did she realize she was clutching something. The silver chain of Aiden's lighthouse watch, broken during the fall. She closed her fingers around it. Dawn's first pale line colored the horizon. She whispered to the gray sky, I cannot forsake him. The chain looped again and again around her palm, a promise forged in salt. Aiden woke with sand crusting his lashes. Pale daylight seeped into the cave. His head throbbed. Last night's memory felt like fractured mirror pieces, the fall, the grip of cold water, silver eyes in liquid darkness. He sat up, winced, and probed his ribs. Bruised but intact. He scrambled to the cave mouth, scanning the shoreline. Shattered driftwood from the storm lay tangled like bones. Higher up, the lighthouse towered, lamp extinguished by dawn. Too calm now to believe the violence of hours before. He remembered her name, Seraya. His gaze fell to his bare wrist. The heirloom watch was gone. Irrational disappointment pricked his throat, his last link to Finn. He swallowed. First find a way up, then tend the light. Yet as he emerged onto the wet rocks, a glint caught his eye. The watch, hanging from a jagged hook of barnacle-coated metal at the cave's arch. The chain gleamed, recently placed. She had returned. He retrieved it, thumb brushing a smooth new scratch across the casing. Sea brine clung faintly to the metal like a signature. Resolute, he climbed the cliff path, ignoring protests from sore muscles. Questions swarmed his thoughts. Who was she truly? Why risk exposure to save him? And why did remembering her eyes feel like the first genuine breath he'd taken in years? At the lighthouse door, he paused, listening. The structure groaned softly, settling after the storm. Inside, the aroma of smoke and salt mingled, comfortingly familiar. He tended the lamp first, trimming wick and relighting its steady flame. Then he went to his desk, drawing battered weather charts closer. Storm irregularities, magnetic deviations, patterns maybe. He glanced at the watch chain, resting it beside a leather-bound journal belonging to great-grandfather Elias Blackthorn. He opened to a marked page. Scrawled ink bled into water-stained margins. Guardians of the Blue keep watch. Tidebound blood must heed the call or all will drown in the Queen's return. A strange thrill coiled in his gut. He touched the words, then the watch, then the open window where gulls wheeled in the clearing sky. Out at sea, the water looked calm, too calm as though waiting. He murmured, I'm listening. And in answer, or imagination, a faint echo of song drifted on the wind, a melody older than memory, laced with sorrow and hope. Seraya lingered in the deeps, watching him through memory, aching to know his soul unbroken. Sunrise stained the water rose gold, yet dread shadowed her mind. The watcher's ultimatum rang like a bell through her bones. By next dawn, she must sever all ties or condemn him. She considered forgetting the shore, diving into trenches no light touched, hiding until centuries washed the guilt away. But one blink of her eyes conjured him. Rain slashing his cheek, defiant heartbeat thrumming beneath her palm. Courage, wrapped in quiet sorrow. She could not abandon him any more than the moon could abandon the tide. So she did the unthinkable. She summoned the subtle current of transformation, coaxing her tail into legs. Agony flared, bones weft anew, scales melting into skin. She gasped as lungs adjusted to air. When it finished, she floated for a moment, half-submerged, shivering. Then she swam awkwardly for the shallows, emerging soaked and barefoot. On trembling legs, she climbed the rocky shore path, borrowed dawn painting her skin. Every step felt like betrayal and revelation. Above, the lighthouse lantern flickered back to life, golden against the pale blue sky. Seraya pressed a hand to her racing heart. By nightfall, she vowed she would stand before Aiden and tell him truth enough to save him, or die trying. Far below, in the cold silence of the abyss, a crack spidered across the ancient obsidian prison. A sliver of hungry darkness seeped into the sea, and a slow, satisfied laughter echoed where no human ear could hear. Soft morning mist curled around the cliffs, turning the world to watercolor. Seraya followed the narrow path up from the cove, her new legs shaking with every step. Pebbles bit into her bare feet, and each breeze carried the crisp tang of violet kelp drying on distant rocks. She hugged herself, marveling at the raw sting of cool air on skin. Every heartbeat seemed too loud, too shallow. She had walked on land before in glimpses, silent, hidden observations, but never so boldly and never under the weight of choice. Halfway up, a low whistle drifted from above. She lifted her gaze. Aiden stood on the outer gallery of the lighthouse, adjusting a storm-battered weather vane. Sunrise painted gold across his dark hair, and for a moment he looked almost mythic himself, like a lonely statue refusing to crumble. She stepped from shadow into direct light. He stilled, then hurried down the spiral stairs that clung to the tower's flank, boots clanging against metal. They met where the path broadened to a patch of wind-flattened grass. He stared, eyes widening. "You..." Words abandoned him. His gaze flicked over her sea-damp shift, the salt crystals in her tangled hair. Are you hurt?" The question burst from him so earnestly that a smile coaxed itself onto her lips. "Only a little cold." He shrugged off his greatcoat, draping it around her shoulders before she could protest. Thick wool swallowed her frame, heavy with the scent of smoke, salt, and cedar oil. Warmth spread through her. "I didn't know if you were real," he murmured. "I am." She steadied shaky breath. "My name is Raya." She let the shortened version fall easily. It felt safer for now. "Raya," he repeated, tasting it. Well, you know me." A hint of rueful humor warmed his voice. "Aiden Blackthorn, lighthouse recluse, frequent victim of misadventure." She laughed softly, delighted by how the sound stirred him. "You saved many sailors last night by keeping the lamp lit." He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing skyward. "That's my duty. Odd how fate repaid effort by knocking me off my own roof." Fate is subtle. A breeze pushed her wet hair across her eyes. Without thinking, he brushed it back, fingers gentle near her temple. The touch sparked a tremor down her spine. He seemed to feel it too, withdrawing with a blush. "Come inside," he said quickly. "There's a fire in the kitchen." She followed through the iron-bound door. The interior smelled of paraffin, old paper, and bread just baked. The hearth was busy. Aiden set about stoking logs, then poured steaming coffee into a chipped mug. She curled near the flames, mesmerized by their flicker. He slid the mug toward her. "Best I can offer, you must be frozen." She wrapped both hands around the earthenware, though the aroma was foreign. She lifted it, cautious, lips grazing warmth. Bitterness nipped her tongue. She hid a grimace. He watched, amused. "New to coffee?" "Very." "Well, you're braver than me. I can't stomach it black either." He fetched a jar of honey, stirring a spoonful into her cup. "Better?" She tried again, sweetness now weaving through smoky notes. "Much." He perched on a stool opposite, elbows on knees. Silence pooled between them, thick with questions. She met his gaze. You have questions, I may answer some. Some? He smiled crookedly. All right, let's start simple. Where did you come from? Far across the water, she said. I travel the coast studying storms. His brow quirked. That seems dangerous. I manage. He looked ready to press but held back as if respecting closeted secrets. Instead, he asked, What happened after you pulled me inside that cave? One moment I was drowning, the next breathing underwater. His voice lowered. I wasn't afraid. I felt safe. Her throat tightened. My people know ways to share breath. The sea can cradle as gently as it can kill. You speak of it like a living creature. To me, it is. The words carried wistfulness she hadn't meant to reveal. She set the mug down. I came to be sure you were well. You could have watched from the shadows again. His tone was gentle, not accusing. Why risk stepping ashore? Why indeed? Because the watchers had forced her hand, and because one brush with his heartbeat had dissolved centuries of discipline. She searched for a safer answer. You lost something last night, she said, reaching into the coat pocket. She produced the silver watch chain. His breath hitched. I thought it gone. I found it on the rocks. She placed it in his palm. Their fingers touched. Electric, warm. I believe it matters to you. He traced the casing's scratch. It was my brother's. Finn, she said before she could stop herself. Surprise sparked in his eyes. How did you? She felt the moment slipping beyond concealment. You once spoke his name by the window, she said, voice nearly a whisper. I was near. He sat back, studying her anew. How long have you been near, Raya? Her pulse thundered. Long enough to know you keep this lighthouse alive as though your own heartbeat fuels the lamp. And long enough to know sorrow lingers on you like mist each dawn. Emotion clouded his gaze. Gratitude mingled with confusion. She forced herself not to reach across the table and smooth the furrow from his brow. Above them the wind shifted. A low moan threaded through the rafters, deeper than any earthly gust. Seraya stiffened. She recognized that resonance. The watchers murmuring across plains. Aiden looked up. That sounded wrong. She stood abruptly. I must step outside. He rose too. I'm coming with you. No. She pressed a hand to his chest. Warmth radiated through flannel to her fingertips. Stay by the fire. He searched her eyes, hesitant, but nodded once. She slipped from the kitchen, down a narrow hallway, and out onto a ledge bathed in the gray hush before full dawn. Sea fog licked the rocks. She braced herself against the stone wall and closed her eyes. Salt water flowed through her veins, calling currents to obedience. She sent her thoughts outward, brushing the threshold where realm and spirit touched. Shapes coalesced in the fog. Tall, robed figures spilling seawater from empty sleeves. Phantoms of the deep watchers, their presence projected rather than embodied. Oathbreaker, their collective whisper washed over her like sleet. At sunrise, the decision seals. Her mouth went dry. I beg time. Let me explain. The Queen's chains shatter. Your bond accelerates demise. Cut it or we will. Their forms flickered, edges dissolving into mist. A final echo lingered. Dawn. Seraya. Dawn. She opened her eyes to cold light. Already, a brightening rim of sun teased the far horizon. Less than a day. Footsteps scuffed behind her. She pivoted. Aiden stood in the doorway, face pale. Who were you talking to? She managed a brittle smile. The wind. He stepped closer, gaze on the fog dispersing across the sea. Wind doesn't answer back. Inside, kettle steam shrieked. She hurried past him, using the mundane sound as shield. Your water boils. They returned to the kitchen, unspeaking. He filled the pot, hands steady, though worry tightened his jaw. She sipped more coffee, now sweetened, trying to anchor herself. A soft knock rattled the front door, unusual at this hour. Aiden answered. A middle-aged fisherman, Anders, soaked to the knees, clutched a wool cap. "Mornin', keeper," he said, voice taut. "Something's wrong in the bay. Nets torn clean through, boats half sunk, whole shoals of fish washing ashore dead with bite marks." Seraya's stomach lurched. "Bite marks?" Aiden frowned. "Like rows of needles," Anders said. "Never seen the species, and the water was humming." "I'll come down after I secure the lantern." "We need help sooner than later," Anders urged, eyes darting to Seraya behind Aiden's shoulder. She pulled the coat tighter. "We'll be there," Aiden promised. Anders left. Aiden closed the door slowly. "That can't be ordinary sharks." "No," Seraya said. Dread iced her spine. The drowned queen was sending scouts. Aiden looked at her. "You know what it is?" "I fear I do." "Then tell me." She met his gaze, wavering. The oath demanded secrecy, but the Watcher's deadline neared. Truth might be Aiden's only shield. She inhaled. "Walk with me," she said. "I'll show you." They descended winding stairs outside the lighthouse, boots clanging. At the base, Aiden fetched an old motorbike and handed her a spare helmet, though her confusion betrayed unfamiliarity. He smiled faintly. "You said you study storms, surely you've ridden—" "Teach me." He guided her onto the seat, warmth solid at her back. Engine growling, they rattled down a coastal dirt road to the village. People clustered by the wharf, shouting over each other. Seraya glimpsed dark, slick bodies tangled in nets. Eel-like creatures with transparent skin, fanged and still twitching. The air reeked of brine and rot. Aiden parked. Seraya followed, senses flaring. The creature's presence warped currents even on shore. A fisherman prodded one with an oar. It lunged, snapping. Seraya reacted, sweeping her hand. A jet of water erupted from a bucket, slamming the eel into a piling hard enough to break spine. Villagers gaped. Aiden stared at her. "You moved water." It obeyed. She kept eyes on the sea, where shadows writhed beneath the pier. More eels burst onto the planks, 30 or more, thrashing toward humans. Screams rose. Seraya stepped forward. Her pulse thrummed. She let power unfurl. A column of seawater rose around her like a cyclone, encasing eels, ripping them from wood, and flinging them back into the depths. Villagers fell silent, but for panting breaths. In the hush, Aiden's voice trembled. "Raya, what are you?" She turned to him, torn open by decision. "Not what you think." He led her to a boathouse away from staring faces. Doors closed, smell of tar and wet rope thick. He studied her. "When I was a child, I dreamed of mermaids. My grandmother said blackthorns were watched by sea spirits. I thought her mad. Then last night I breathed underwater." He touched the watch. "And today, you dance with tides." Tears burned Seraya's eyes. "Because the water is home." "Say it plain," he urged. "Trust me." She sucked air through trembling lips. "I am Seraya, guardian of the Tidebound line. I was sworn to protect your blood, never to reveal myself. But I broke that vow when I saved you." She lifted her hand. Faint luminescent sigils shimmered under skin. "Now the deep watchers demand I erase our bond or surrender your life." He absorbed each word, jaw tight. "Erase our bond, how?" "By severing memory. You'd forget me, forget this day. Your life would remain, but hollowed." He exhaled, pace of his breath quickening. "And if you refuse, they will take you, and afterward hunt us both." He laughed once, a raw, disbelieving sound. "So my choices are amnesia or death?" "Those dictated by the Watchers." She stepped closer, tears threatening. "But I believe some other path exists. I feel it when I look at you." He searched her face, storm-gray eyes shining. Slowly, he reached and brushed her cheek. Saltwater tear tracks traced his thumb. I'd rather die knowing truth than live half a man. She leaned into his touch, eyes closing. I cannot lose you. Then we fight. Their foreheads touched, breath mingling. A soft gasp left her lips. The closeness overwhelmed, yet anchored her trembling heart. Outside, wind picked up, moaning through gaps in planks. He drew back an inch. Tell me how. We must confront the Watchers and bind a new oath, one forged together. But it risks everything. He smiled, though fear shadowed edges. Everything is all I have. She laughed wetly. The sound faded as the boathouse creaked. Boards shook. A rotten beam split. A wave taller than the roof crashed against the doors, splintering them inward. Water flooded, carrying dozens of fanged eels twisting like blades. Aiden yanked Seraya atop a hanging dinghy just in time. Creatures writhed below, snapping at their boots. Seraya crouched on the gunwale, eyes glowing. She laced her fingers. Water gathered above the swarm, swirling into a sphere that compressed until the eel's bones cracked. She released, and seawater spilled harmlessly. But more shadows approached outside, hundreds slithering through rising tide. Aiden steadied her. They aren't stopping. The drowned queen's heralds, she whispered. She tests our weakness. He gripped her shoulders. Then we show none. He hopped down, splintered oar in hand. Seraya vaulted after, stance fluid. Side by side they fought, his oar crushing skulls, her water whips slicing creatures midair. Barn lanterns shattered, sparks spraying. At last the tide retreated, leaving eel corpses strewn like dark ribbons. Exhausted villagers emerged from hiding, eyes wide with fearful reverence. Seraya scanned the horizon. A bruise-colored storm massed offshore despite clear skies moments earlier. Within its heart, a single lightning fork glowed green. The Queen's mark. Aiden followed her gaze. She's coming, isn't she? Yes. Seraya steadied ragged breathing. Tonight, maybe sooner. We need allies, tools, knowledge. My mother's archive, he said suddenly, recalling journals. There are more volumes in the lighthouse cellar. Maps, sigils, wartime accounts. They might tell how our ancestor bound the Queen. Hope flared. She nodded. Together they jogged uphill. At the lighthouse, he led her to a trapdoor in the floorboards. Dust motes danced as they descended a narrow stairwell to a stone cellar lined with shelves, weathered chests, parchment rolls, mildewed tomes. Aiden lit a lantern. Seraya explored, fingers skimming spines. One book pulsed faintly. She felt magic humming within. She opened to a page depicting a circle formed of intertwining waves and thorns, a sigil of binding. Beneath, an inscription in the ancient tongue. 2 hearts, 1 tide. Blood and breath entwined shall seal abyss. She translated aloud. Aiden listened, expression fierce. 2 hearts, he repeated. That's us. She nodded, pulse racing. If we perform this rite, we can lock the Queen away again, and shatter the Watcher's threat. But the rite demands the blood, he said, pointing to stylized droplets inked below the design. Seraya's breath hitched. A sacrifice. He met her eyes. Then we share it. Thunder cracked directly overhead. Dust showered from the ceiling. Lantern flame quivered. On the stairs above, a rasping whisper slithered. Oathbreaker. Seraya spun. At the cellar entrance, mist spilled inward, forming a looming shape. A Watcher projection, taller than the beams allowed, tendrils of seawater dripping from its blank face. Aiden stepped in front of Seraya, holding lantern like a weapon. Leave her. The Watcher's voice seeped through them. Dawn has passed. Choice rendered. We claim the blood. Seraya stood shoulder to shoulder with Aiden, heart roaring. You will have to cross us both. Very well. From misty torso, a spear of liquefied obsidian formed. Aiden lifted his empty hand, breathing deeply. recalling the feeling beneath the storm. Water inside the lantern's glass shuddered, pulled by his will. Flame extinguished. The water burst forth, spiraling into a shield that solidified between them and the spear. The Watcher's attack met the barrier with hissing steam. Its hollow face tilted. Tidebound blood awakens, the queen will feast on it. Seraya gathered her magic. Brilliant turquoise light flared around her palms. She envisioned the binding sigil etched onto the floorboards, power coiling into shape. The Watcher recoiled as searing lines traced across the air, forming the wreathed circle of waves and thorns. It hissed, "Foolish child, you would bind eternity with love." "Yes," she whispered, voice ringing with certainty. The projection shattered, scattering salt crystals across the cellar. Silence followed, broken only by their harsh breathing. Aiden's hand trembled in hers, adrenaline ebbing. Did we just win? Only postponed. She closed the tome. Tonight, under moonrise, we finish the rite. He drew her close, her heartbeat against his chest. Then I'm with you, till tide's end. Their lips hovered, breath mingling, not yet brave enough to cross that final inch. But the promise passed between them, like current through water. Outside, the unnatural storm inched closer, its green lightning painting the horizon a sickly hue. From the abyss below, the drowned queen opened her eyes. The unnatural storm crouched over the horizon like a living bruise, each pulsing flash bleaching the clouds a sickly green. In the cellar, Aiden and Seraya poured over the binding sigil. Candle flame jittered from drafts that carried the stench of brine and decay even this high on the cliffs. Seraya traced the intertwined lines with her fingertip. Where thorn met wave, a faint glow answered her touch. "We need a circle at the water's edge," she murmured. "Low tide gives us room, but the queen will sense the right." Aiden closed the tome. "We draw it in salt and iron filings. I have both." He hesitated. "The blood offering, let it be mine." She shook her head, silver hair rippling. "The power lies in union, not in one sacrifice. We share it." His rough palm cupped her cheek. "All my life I thought grief made me hollow. Now I know it carved out space for this moment." His voice lowered. "For you." Emotion rushed through her, bright and fierce. She leaned in, lips brushing his. The kiss bloomed soft, then urgent, wave meeting shore. When they parted, a thread of light flickered between their chests before fading. "Bond's already growing," she whispered. He steadied his breath. "Then let's see it through." They packed quickly, a canvas sack of coarse salt, a tin of iron shavings Aiden used for ship compass repairs, the old journal, and the lantern now filled with seawater instead of oil. Seraya carried the tome. Its pages hummed like distant surf. Outside, villagers hammered shutters against rising wind. Anders the fisherman called to Aiden. "More of those eel devils off the breakwater. We're readying harpoons." Aiden clasped Anders's arm. "Stay inland when the real storm hits." He glanced at Seraya, then back. "Trust me." Anders read the gravity in his eyes and nodded. "May the lighthouse guard you, keeper." They hurried down the headland path toward the tidal flats. Waves already lapped higher than usual, as though the sea drew breath for something immense. The sky darkened to bruised violet. Lightning forks scrawled runes across the clouds. On open sand they knelt. Aiden poured salt in a wide ring 6 strides across. Seraya followed with iron filings, weaving them through the salt until lines formed the wreathed symbol. Where iron met salt, faint turquoise sparks jumped. They stood in the center. Wind howled, whipping coats and hair. A distant keening rose, neither gust nor gull, an ancient, hungry cry. Seraya recognized it from childhood warnings. The drowned queen. She drew a coral knife from her belt, blade carved with tide glyphs. Its edge gleamed. Aiden rolled up his sleeve. "Together," he said. She sliced lightly across her palm. He did the same. Blood welled dark. They clasped hands, crimson mixing. She shut her eyes, chanting the old words. Aiden repeated, stumbling at first, then, with growing certainty, as the language kindled in his blood memory. The circle of salt and iron blazed turquoise, shooting columns of light skyward. A roar thundered from the surf. Water erupted beyond the flats, rising into a towering vortex. At its core, a figure emerged, a woman tall as a ship's mast, skin slick black, hair writhing like kelp. Eyes burned sea green. A crown of barnacle-encrusted bone perched on her brow. The drowned queen's voice cracked across shore and sky. Little oath-breakers think to cage me again? I sundered empires before your ancestors learned to crawl. Seraya held tighter to Aiden. She'll try to break the circle, focus on the bond. The queen swept an arm, the vortex lunged across the flats. The first impact sent sheets of water slamming the circle. Salt hissed, but the lines held, glowing brighter. Aiden felt power surge from Seraya through him, then back, a tide of shared strength. The queen advanced, claws of liquid obsidian forming around her hands. Watchers, I summon your judgment. Destroy them. Mist condensed beside her into 7 robed giants, but their forms flickered unstable. The tallest spoke, voice laced with doubt. The balance rewrites itself, oath renewed by living choice. The queen snarled, You exist by the old law which I now shatter. She thrust both arms downward, the ground trembled. Fissures cracked across the flats. Brackish water geysered, vomiting eel creatures and skeletal sea hounds that scrambled toward the circle. Aiden raised the lantern. Water inside burst forth, swirling into a wall that smashed the first wave of beasts. Seraya summoned spears of hardened tide, driving them through writhing masses. Lightning struck but deflected off an invisible dome. She spoke between labored breaths. We must seal her, finish the rite. Together they knelt, pressing bloody palms onto the sand. Their mingled blood seeped along the sigil lines, turning light to molten gold. A windstorm erupted in the circle, whipping upward into a glowing pillar. The watchers backed away, robes tattered by shockwaves. The queen shrieked, voice splintering glass in distant cottages. She hurled her vortex against the pillar. It met unbreakable resistance. Tendrils of darkness bled off, disintegrating. She stumbled, crown cracking. Aiden's vision blurred but resolve sharpened. He thought of Finn, of lonely nights reading to ghosts, of this impossible woman beside him. He poured every heartbeat into the chant. The pillar expanded, engulfing the queen. Her form, fractured into shards of water and shadow, sucked inward like debris down a drain. No. Her cry faded as the light imploded, collapsing into a sphere no larger than a pearl. Seraya leaned forward, cupping it. The sphere cooled to translucent crystal, a tiny tempest swirling within. Silence fell. The salt iron circle dimmed. Waves retreated, gentle again. Above, clouds unraveled, revealing stars. The watchers stood on settling sand. Their leader bowed. Balance restored, law remade. No longer guardian in charge, but partners of the tide. The figures dissolved into harmless mist, returning to the deep. Seraya exhaled shakily, turning to Aiden. We did it. He smiled, exhaustion and wonder mingling. You did it, I just followed the current. You are the current. She pressed the crystal pearl into his hand. The queen's prison responds to tidebound blood. Keep it safe. He tucked it over his heart. Dawn's first light pinked the horizon. Gull cries returned, normal and bright. Village bells chimed from inland, testing damage. Few would ever know apocalypse had skimmed their shores. Aiden brushed a stray lock from her face. What now, Seraya? She looked back toward the sea, its surface glassy gold. The oath changes, no more hiding. We guard both worlds together. He grinned. Lighthouse keeper just gained a partner. Hand in hand, they walked the beach. At the cliff path, Anders and other villagers waited, eyes wide at their approach. Dead eel creatures littered tide lines, already dissolving to harmless foam. Anders stared at Seraya's glowing sigil-scarred palm but asked nothing. Aiden spoke simply. "The danger's over. The sea is safe." Anders swallowed, then tipped his cap. "We trust the Blackthorns." He eyed Seraya and their friends. The crowd dispersed, relief tangible. At the lighthouse, they climbed to the lantern room. Morning sun streamed through salt-specked glass. Ships bobbed peacefully on a gentle swell. Seraya leaned on the railing. "I used to watch you from the water, wondering how sky must taste." He joined her, arm curling around her waist. "And I looked out, wondering if something out there watched back." She turned, lifting on toes to kiss him. This time no storm interrupted. The lantern flame behind them glowed brighter, as though celebrating. A distant clap of waves on rock sounded like applause. Later, they rebuilt the cellar into an archive, merging Blackthorn journals with Seraya's sea relics. Villagers accepted Raya's new role as weather scholar and ally to the keeper. Only a handful knew her truth, and that was enough. Many nights Seraya swam with dolphins below while Aiden tended the lamp above, their thoughts twined through the living bond. Sometimes he dove to meet her, breathing through the pearl's magic, exploring coral forests she once called prison. She discovered the taste of coffee sweetened properly, and he learned the songs hidden in whale calls. On the first full moon after the battle, they returned to the tidal flats. In place of salt and iron circles, wildflowers grew, fed by lingering magic. Seraya knelt, touching petals. Life always finds cracks to bloom through. Aiden knelt beside her, and light finds water. He opened a palm. The pearl shone softly. Time to set it deeper. They buried the prison beneath a cairn of smooth stones, each stone marked with interlocking sigils. When the last was placed, golden light pulsed once, then settled. Seraya laced fingers with his. The queen sleeps. The watchers dream new laws. And we... He kissed her knuckles. We live. Sailors will still need guiding lights, and tides still need songs. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. And love still needs guardians. Together they watched moonlight ripple across the sea. No longer divided by water or law, they were the living oath, two hearts, one tide. And as waves whispered ashore, the world exhaled, carried forward on the promise they had forged. Balance held by courage, realms united by love.